You're not sitting with us at the head table. You'll be at the back, near the kitchen. Try not to embarrass us when my husband's colleagues arrive. My sister said it the way you'd remind someone to wipe their feet at the door. Flat, routine, like she'd already rehearsed it a dozen times and was bored of the line. She didn't look at me when she said it. She was adjusting the centerpiece on the head table, a towering arrangement of white peonies and eucalyptus that I had spent 11 hours sourcing and arranging myself, driving to 3 different flower markets in the rain because the florist she'd booked had canceled 48 hours before her garden party. 200 guests were arriving in 4 hours. I picked up another vase and carried it to the back table, near the kitchen, where she'd put me. To understand why I finally walked away from that table and from my sister, you have to understand the 10 years that came before it. Because that afternoon in her backyard wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment the math finally stopped adding up. My name is Vivian. I'm 41 years old. For the past decade, I've worked as a senior federal policy advisor at Health Canada, which sounds impressive until you explain it at family dinners, and then everyone's eyes glaze over and my brother-in-law, Roland, finds a reason to refill his drink. My sister Noelle has always introduced me to her friends the same way. She works for the government. Something with paperwork, said with the particular tone of someone reassuring guests that the quiet cousin isn't a threat to the table conversation. What she has never mentioned, in 10 years not once, is that I hold a master's degree in public health policy from McGill, that I was the lead analyst on the National Opioid Response Framework, or that 6 months before her garden party, I had been appointed to a federal advisory committee that reports directly to the Minister of Health. She also has never mentioned that when her husband's consulting firm was bleeding out in 2019, it was my intervention. A quiet word to the right deputy minister, a referral that took me 3 years of professional goodwill to earn, that kept 2 of their largest government contracts from evaporating. Roland got the credit. He gave interviews about his strategic pivot. He bought Noelle a renovated kitchen in Westmount. I got a Christmas card with a gift card to Indigo inside. $40. They'd already used points on it. There was a gap in the serial number where the balance had been partially redeemed. But that's not even what broke me. What broke me was the flower arrangement at the back table, near the kitchen, where she'd put me. It was December the year before her party when I first understood what I was actually dealing with. Our parents had come in from Owen Sound for the holidays. We all met at Noelle's house. She always hosts, always has, because hosting means she controls the seating, the menu, the pacing, and the narrative. I drove 3 hours in a snowstorm, with a car full of groceries she'd asked me to bring, 12 specific items. I remember because I'd texted the list to a friend as a joke. 2 pounds of Gruyere, a case of sparkling water that's not Perrier because Roland finds the bottles ungainly, fresh dill that wasn't from a grocery chain because you can taste the difference. I arrived at 3 p.m. She opened the door, looked past me at the bags and said, "Did you get the Gruyere from the Atwater Market?" I said Atwater specifically. I had gotten it from a cheesemonger in Westmount because Atwater was closed for renovations. She took the bags, said, "Well, it's probably fine," and walked back inside without saying hello. My mother hugged me at the door. My dad took one of the bags from my hands and squeezed my shoulder. At dinner, Noelle announced that Roland's firm had just signed a new contract with the provincial government. Everyone toasted. Roland talked for 20 minutes about his vision for integrated service delivery. Our mother asked follow-up questions. Our father nodded along. I knew every policy lever Roland had ridden to get that contract because I'd spent 2 years quietly nudging them open, but I said nothing. I ate my Gruyere, probably fine, and passed the breadbasket. After dessert, Noelle handed out Christmas envelopes. My parents got theirs first, a weekend at an inn in Charlevoix. My nephew, her son from her first marriage, got an envelope full of hockey tickets. She'd chosen the games herself, had already planned to drive him. She pushed my envelope across the table without looking up from her phone. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, a printed-out list of decluttering tips she had cut from a magazine. "I thought this might be helpful," she said, still not looking up. "For your apartment." She'd seen my apartment once, 3 years before, for 40 minutes, when she needed to store some furniture during a renovation. She decided it was cluttered based on the fact that I had books on my floor while I was in the middle of moving a shelf. My father's fork stopped halfway to his plate. He looked at me across the table. I shook my head slightly. He put the fork down. Nobody said a word. I drove home at 11 p.m. in the snow. The highway was empty. I had 3 more years of this ahead of me before the garden party. 3 years of being assigned the back table, the wrong envelope, the wrong cheese market, the wrong seat. 3 years of being managed and diminished and redirected, like something inconvenient that needed to be smoothed over before company arrived. But I wasn't ready to flip the table yet. And I had reason. Some of them were practical. Our parents were in their mid-70s. My father's health had been uneven since a cardiac episode in 2021. Noelle handled the visible parts of supporting them: the Sunday dinners, the birthday parties, the organized chaos of family logistics. And I handled everything underneath: the private benefits advisor, who helped them restructure their pension withdrawals to reduce their tax exposure; the call I made to a colleague at the Federal Disability Office when my father's provincial application for mobility support stalled for 6 months. I couldn't blow up my relationship with Noelle without blowing up the scaffolding that kept everything else standing. Some of the reasons were older and harder to look at directly. I had spent a long time believing that if I was useful enough, patient enough, if I brought the right cheese and said the right things and arranged the right flowers, eventually Noelle would see me the way I needed her to. Not as the quiet one, the government one, the one who works with paperwork. As her sister. As the person who had driven 3 hours in a snowstorm because she asked. People tell you the same thing with enough repetition, and you start to believe it's just the weather. You don't think of it as a choice anymore. But on the morning of Noelle's garden party, something shifted. She called me at 7:15 a.m. The party started at 2. I had already been up since 5 driving to pick up the peonies. I was in my car, coffee going cold in the cup holder when she called. The tent company set it up wrong. The rental chairs are the wrong color. The catering company called, and they're running 30 minutes late. I need you to handle all of this. I said I would handle it. Also, when you arrive, go directly to the back entrance. Roland's partners are arriving early, and I don't want it to look like we're still setting up. Use the service entrance, don't let the guests see you. And Vivian, please don't wear that green dress. You wore it to Cousin Mark's thing last spring and everyone remembers it. Wear something neutral. Don't make it about you. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. I was wearing a plain gray blazer over a white shirt. I'd left the green dress at home 2 days earlier, when she had texted me the same warning unprompted. I went in the back entrance. I fixed the tent configuration, reoriented the rental chairs, met the catering truck at the gate, directed their setup, rearranged 4 tables, because the layout Noelle had approved didn't account for the wheelchair access her mother-in-law needed, and sourced a last-minute order of cocktail napkins from a party supply store on Jean Talon, because the original order was 40 short. By 1:45 p.m., everything was in order. The backyard looked beautiful. 200 chairs, white linens, peonies and eucalyptus in every corner, a rented stage for the string quartet Noelle had booked through a contact I had given her. I washed my hands in the utility bathroom by the catering entrance, straightened my blazer, and walked toward the guest tables. Noelle materialized beside me like she'd been waiting. "Head table is full," she said. "You'll be at table 16. Table 16 was pressed against the fence near the caterer's staging area. You could hear the propane burners from where it sat. The 4 other guests at the table were the parking attendants who'd been told to sit down for dinner between rotations. I stood still for a moment. I looked at the head table. Roland's partner sat there, his university friends, Noelle's book club. A woman I'd never met who Noelle introduced to everyone as her oldest friend. They were drinking the Riesling I had recommended and arranged to have delivered. I had driven 340 kilometers in the past 48 hours doing tasks Noelle could not or would not manage herself. I had not been offered a glass of water. "Near the kitchen," she said again like I hadn't heard. "It's not a big deal, Vivian. Don't make it weird." My phone buzzed. I looked down. It was my deputy minister. Not a text, a call, which she never did for routine matters. I stepped away from Noelle and answered, "Vivian, I need you back in Ottawa Monday morning. We've been asked to brief the minister's office on the pharmacare implementation file. She specifically asked for you to lead the presentation." I turned so Noelle couldn't see my face. "There's something else," my DM continued. "The committee work you submitted last month, I'm told it's being referenced in the draft cabinet document. The PMO's office wants to put your name on the acknowledgements. I had been working on that submission for 11 months. I had written most of it during evenings and weekends, often from the kitchen table of my 740-square-foot apartment, surrounded by the books I hadn't yet found shelves for. Also," she said, dropping her voice slightly, "I heard through the department that the Order of Canada nominations review is in its early stages. I submitted your name 3 weeks ago. I wanted you to know." I stood very still. Behind me, I heard Noelle tell someone that the floral arrangements had been professionally sourced. She said it in a way that implied she had sourced them. I stayed on the phone for another 2 minutes. When I hung up, I walked back to where Noelle was standing. She was mid-sentence to Roland's managing partner, a man named Aubrey who I had actually met twice at federal policy conferences, though Noelle didn't know that. She had just finished explaining that I help out with logistics sometimes. "Help out with logistics," I said. Noelle turned. Her smile didn't change, but something behind her eyes tightened. "Oh, there you are. Table 16. I arranged every flower in this backyard," I said. "I was here at 6 this morning. I fixed the tent, I rerouted the catering, I redesigned the table layout so your mother-in-law could get through in her chair, and I just got off the phone with my deputy minister about a cabinet briefing. Nobody moved. You introduced me as the person who helps with logistics. To a man I've met at 2 federal policy conferences. Aubrey's expression shifted. He looked at me more carefully. Vivian, you were at the Chateau Frontenac session last March? The pharmacare panel? I moderated it, I said. The silence that followed was different from the silences I was used to at Noel's events. Those were the kind that happened when someone said something slightly off color and everyone waited for the moment to pass. This was the kind that happened when the room recalibrated. Noel said my name in a low warning tone. I turned to her fully. I've been at the back table for 10 years, I said, near the kitchen, not making it weird, bringing the right cheese, using the back entrance, wearing neutral colors, carrying the tent poles. I did it because I thought eventually it would matter, that you'd see it, that it would mean something. She opened her mouth. I kept going. You gave me a magazine clipping for Christmas. A list of decluttering tips. For my apartment, which you saw once while you needed to use it as a storage unit. I looked at her directly. You handed Roland a federal contract and never mentioned my name. He gave interviews about his strategic vision. You renovated your kitchen. This is not the time, she started. It's never the time. There's always company. There's always a reason for me to go around the back and not make it weird. But I moderated a national pharmacare panel, and you just introduced me as the person who helps with logistics. Aubrey excused himself quietly. 2 or 3 other people near the head table found reasons to look away or step back, which somehow made everything quieter and larger at the same time. My mother appeared from somewhere near the string quartet. She had clearly heard enough. She put her hand on my arm, not to stop me, just to be there. The Order of Canada nomination review opened 3 weeks ago, I said to Noel. My voice was level. I had spoken in rooms where cabinet ministers were waiting for my recommendation. I knew how to hold a room. My name's been submitted. I found out 10 minutes ago, standing in your backyard. After you told me to use the service entrance and not wear green. Noel's face went through several expressions in quick succession. The first was something close to contempt, the reflex, the one I'd watched work on her face at family dinners for a decade. Then something else moved through, something slower, less practiced. A crack in the glaze. You never told me any of this, she said finally. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. You never asked, I said. Not once in 10 years. Not what I was working on, not how I was doing, not what the job actually was. You asked me what cheese to buy and whether my dress would clash with your centerpieces. She looked at the peonies, then at the table, then at the guests who were very carefully examining their wine glasses. I didn't know, she said. You didn't want to know, I said. There's a difference. I looked at my mother. Her eyes were bright. She squeezed my arm once. I looked at the string quartet warming up near the stage, the contact I'd given Noel, the Riesling I'd recommended, the eucalyptus I'd sourced in the rain. I'm going to go say hello to Aubrey, I said, since we've met before. I walked across the backyard, through the white linen and the peonies, toward the head table. I sat down. Nobody moved me. For the first time in 10 years, there was nowhere else I needed to be. In the weeks after the garden party, the silence from Noel was the shape of her. She didn't call. She didn't text. She sent one email 4 days later, with the subject line Tuesday. She'd already sent a previous email asking me to pick up her dry cleaning before a Tuesday appointment, apparently forgetting she'd sent it. The body of the new email said only, "Never mind, I'll figure it out." I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and went back to the briefing notes I was drafting for Monday. My mother called me the Saturday after the party. I was at the Atwater Market, actually open now, fully renovated, getting cheese for nobody in particular, just for myself. She's upset, my mother said, not defending her, not asking me to fix it, just reporting. I know, I said. She didn't know, Vivian. She genuinely didn't know how much you were doing. I held the phone against my ear and looked at a wheel of aged cheddar behind the glass case. She didn't want to know, Mum. That's not the same thing. My mother was quiet for a long moment. No, she said finally. I suppose it isn't. 2 weeks after the party, I was in Ottawa for the cabinet briefing. The minister's office had prepared a presentation room on the 7th floor, a long table, institutional carpet, the specific quality of light that federal buildings have in late summer, flat and even and slightly exhausting. I had spent the weekend revising my sections of the presentation. I had a flat white from the market 2 blocks from my hotel. I had slept well. The briefing lasted 4 hours. Afterward, the minister's chief of staff shook my hand and said, "The framework you built on the implementation gaps is exactly what this office needed. I'd like to have a follow-up conversation about the next phase." I thanked her. I took the elevator down alone. I stood on the sidewalk outside the Langevin block and looked at the Peace Tower for a moment. I had never told Noel about any of the work I did. Not because I was hiding it. I'd mentioned it, in the way you mention a thing when you can see someone isn't listening, but because she had spent 10 years making it clear that my work was the boring part of me, the part you got through before asking about the more interesting people at the table. So I had stopped offering it. And when you stop offering, eventually you stop thinking anyone wants it. And that's the part that cost you more than the back table ever did. I stopped by my parents' house on the drive home from Ottawa. My dad was in the backyard, deadheading his roses. He does it slowly and very seriously, like it requires concentration. I sat on the porch steps and watched him for a while. "Noelle called," he said, not looking up from the roses. "I figured. She said she wants to apologize." He clipped a dead bloom and held it for a second before dropping it in the bucket. "Whether she means it the right way or the wrong way, I can't say. I know." He looked at me then. "My father has a way of looking at you that doesn't demand anything, just pays attention." "You should have told us," he said. "The work, the committee, all of it, not to prove something. Just, we would have liked to know." I looked at the roses, a pink climber that had been there since I was 12. "I didn't think anyone was asking." "Your mother and I were always asking," he said. "Sometimes quiet people ask quietly." I sat with that for a minute. "She's going to want to make it about the party," I said. "The flowers, the table. She's going to apologize for the logistics and feel like that covers it." "Maybe," he said. "Then you'll have to decide if that's enough." I drove home that evening with the windows down. The highway was loud and green, and it was the kind of late August evening where the light does something to the fields that makes them look like they're lit from inside. I had a 4-hour drive and a new file starting Monday and a deputy minister who had submitted my name to a national honors committee. My phone was on the passenger seat. Noelle's name wasn't on the screen. Not yet. I thought about what my father had said, whether the apology she offered would cover what she owed, whether I would know the difference. I didn't have an answer yet. That was honest. Some things take longer than a garden party to untangle, and the ones that go back 10 years tend to unfold at their own pace, on their own timeline. What I did have, driving home that evening, was the clearest sense I'd had in years of where I actually stood. Not at the back table, not near the kitchen, not arranging flowers for someone else to take credit for. I had sat at the head table. Nobody had moved me. The Riesling I'd recommended was still in the glass when I finished it. I rolled the window down farther and let the evening in. The woman who walked in through the back entrance and said nothing had set down her boxes at the garden gate and didn't pick them up again. I wasn't going back for them.